What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing another new comic book day top picks, and this week I picked 3 books that are shrouded in secrecy and full of lies. So before I ramble too much longer, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. I'll be right back. To kick this all off, there's nothing that's shrouded in more secrecy and lies than conspiracy theories. So the first book I'm excited about this week is The Department of Truth. This is an image book that's being written by James Tynion IV, and the art's done by Martin Simmons. I don't know a lot about this book because this is a #1, this is a brand new series. Probably the biggest reason I'm picking it up is James Tynion. He's doing an incredible job with everything he's writing. I don't know a lot about Martin Simmons, but I have followed him on social media, and the artwork that he's showing off for this book looks incredible, but it makes little to no sense outside of the context. So, if this book can bring together what we know about Tynion's writing and give some context to what I'm seeing out of Simmons, I think we have a huge hit on our hands, and I think it would be a big mistake to miss Department of Truth #1. What I do know about this book so far is that Cole Turner has studied conspiracy theories all of his life. But Cole isn't prepared for what happens when he discovers that all of them are true. From the JFK assassination to flat earth theory, one organization has been covering up these conspiracies for generations. But what is the deep, dark secret behind the Department of Truth? That sounds really interesting to me. I'm not big into conspiracy theories themselves, but what does interest me about them is the culture that is around the conspiracy theory, for lack of a better term, nut jobs. I think there's something really interesting psychologically that's happening that causes people to latch on to these ridiculous theories. And so a book that explores that by exploring the very concept that these could possibly be real is very interesting to me. So I'm excited to check this out. There's a lot of heavyweight talent behind this, so I do think that it's going to turn out good no matter what, but there's a pretty solid formula that's working here, and this definitely feels like a 2020 kind of book. USAGI YOJIMBO #13. This is written and illustrated by Stan Sakai. The colors are done by Tom Luth. This is the 13th book in the IDW run of USAGI YOJIMBO. I believe that ranks somewhere around volume 4 of his adventures, but this has been a great story so far. 11 and 12 were the first 2 parts of a story called The Return, where we get to see Usagi go back home, but there's a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts, and he gets himself caught up in a situation where he has to tell some lies and kind of disguise his true intentions from people that he really loves and cares about from his childhood. And I think this has been an interesting story so far. Number 13 is going to be the penultimate issue of the story, and then 14 will wrap that up. So we're right at that halfway point where there's a lot of nice twists and turns, and so that cliffhanger from last week really left me guessing what's going to happen next. In The Return so far, what we've seen is Usagi washed up on shore, on a shore of a little creek, and there was Mariko there. She took him in, she took care of him, he wakes up, and as he reunites with Mariko, who is somebody from his childhood, a love interest from his childhood, we're introduced to Kenichi, who was his childhood rival and is now the husband of Mariko, his childhood love. So we get a little flashback scene, and it shows us that Kenichi was never really, he was almost like a bully, you know? He was always trying to put Usagi in the worst possible light, and yet Usagi was always able to overcome. So there's already a source of tension there, and Kenichi is now the head of this village that Usagi and them grew up in. However, Usagi has left as a samurai once he grew up, so this is his big return home. We meet some of the other people. A servant girl named Yakoi comes in, and she takes care of him, But really, she's an exposition dump. She sits there and she's bandaging his wounds and telling him about all the things he's missed over the years since he's been gone. And so that kind of catches the audience up to the modern politics that are going on within this village. At that point, Yokoi goes outside. She comes back in screaming she needs help. The village is under attack. And we are introduced to Kato, who is a wandering samurai of sorts that we had met earlier. He works for Lord Hikiji, but he was previously, somebody that served under Lord Mifune. So there's a weird thing with alliances going on there and how Usagi feels about him. But he does reassure Usagi that he's only secretly working, or I guess in the public, he works for Lord Hikiji, but he hasn't forgot about Lord Mifune. He wants to get revenge on him, so they're planning a political assassination. They are going to take out somebody important to Lord Hikiji, and that should destroy all of his political aspirations and stop his plan. Usagi is very concerned about how that's going to look for the people of this village, though. And he's very concerned that, yeah, they might be able to stop Lord Hikiji, but he's going to bring his men back and punish everybody in this village for what they're trying to do here. So he agrees to take their side because he realizes he really has no way out. They're either going to hold him captive with everybody else from the village, or he's going to join them and help them commit this act. So he convinces them that he's joining them. They start to set everything up, and he uses the level of trust he has with Kato and the guards and stuff. We meet a couple of other people that he's known since way back in the day, so he has a lot of trust here from that side. He sets them up with some openings in their guard posts, and then he, under in the moonlight, he sneaks out and he goes and he releases the people from his childhood, Kenichi, Mariko, and Yokoi, and they are being sent off to basically ask the emissary not to go into that village so that the assassination can't happen. Meanwhile, Usagi and Kenichi are going to stay behind to protect the villagers from the retaliation of Kato and those forces whenever they realize that the emissary is not going to show up and that something's not quite right. So that's what we're going into 13 here with. There's a lot of interesting things going on with the politics of this village. There's a lot of great characters here. And I feel like this is a really good story of Usagi that shows that the character and the creator, Stan Sakai, are both much more elevated than what they kind of come off as. I know Usagi often comes off as like a kid's cartoon or a kid's cartoon character, but these are some of the stories that really make it worth it. This is almost like a Game of Thrones kind of thing where you have so many moving parts. There's a lot of internal politics here. There's a lot of long history. And so it's a really exciting read. This is going to be the third part in a 4-part series. I would not be surprised if there are copies sitting on your shelf. So this Wednesday, September the 30th, when you go out, go ahead and grab Usagi Yojimbo number 11, number 12, and this week number 13 will be out. And I promise you this story will more than likely get you into Usagi if you aren't already a giant fan like myself. That Texas Blood, number 4. This is written by Chris Condon, and the art is done by Jacob Phillips. And this has been an incredible read so far. The first book was a little bit different. It was almost like a little one-shot that just kind of like introduced us to the town and some of the characters that inhabit this small West Texas town. But issue number 2 picked up in a pretty good spot, and that's where the story really starts to unfold. In issue 2, they find somebody from the town named Travis. Outside the town, they find the dead body. This is Travis. Then we meet his brother Randy. And that's who our story really follows, because Randy, he comes back to this town because he's told that his brother Travis is dead. So he goes back to this town to kind of take care of things, tie up the loose ends or whatever. He checks into a hotel called the Balasso, which becomes kind of important in all of this. He checks in there. There's a strange interaction with the front desk clerk. He walks over to a local diner called Kenny's, and while he's in the diner trying to eat, he again encounters this odd situation with a waitress there. She really doesn't care for her brother Travis, who is now deceased, and the whole reason that Randy is back in town. The Sheriff Joe from the first issue, he shows up, takes him back to, I guess, the courthouse or the jail, and basically sits him down and tells him, as much as he really can. And ultimately, that's when he finds out that his brother was not murdered. He didn't just die. So now Randy is we find out in this issue, basically, like, Randy was just as bad as his brother, but at some point he fell in love, I guess, had a change of heart, and left town. And he's since tried to turn his life around, and he hasn't been back to this town. He hasn't been to see anybody, but Travis has been here being this awful human the whole time, and so people really don't like him, and they're not happy to see Randy back either. And so that's kind of where, like, a lot of it feels very much like a story of, like, you get pulled back in when you go back home, especially when you're talking about a small town where everybody knows everybody. And so that's really what the second issue set up there. In the third issue, we find out that Randy, after he found out about his brother's murder, he walked back to the Belasco. But whenever he got there, he ran into a girl from the diner who used to be one of his old flings when he lived here. And she sees it as he basically ran away from her. So things happen there, and basically they end up sleeping together. Probably not a good thing, because the next day Randy wakes up, he's taking a shower, and somebody comes into his hotel room, which to me should become kind of a source of contention, because this is like the second or third person that's just been in his hotel room. And they always say, like, the front desk guy let him in. So I don't know what the deal is with that guy. He said he doesn't want any trouble, so I guess he's just letting everybody in so they won't cause a scene out in public. But Randy should do something about that part. So he gets out of the shower. There's a guy in his room, holds him at gunpoint, tells him he needs to go with him because somebody named Kuttner wants to speak with him. And he also reveals that he has a long scar down the side of his face. And there's some things there that reveal that it had to do with Travis, although we don't know exactly what Travis did or what the circumstance was. So he goes with Fred. They go out into the middle of, like, basically nowhere. And this guy named Fred drops him off. This guy named Kuttner pulls up in a truck and basically beats the crap out of him. He's, like, kicking in his face. And Sheriff Joe shows up. And Sheriff Joe takes him. They go back into town. And as they're coming into town, Sheriff Joe asks him if he wants him to drop him off at the Belasco again, and he says, no, it's time to go home. And that's kind of what the third issue was all about, was going home. There's a lot of moments in there where people ask him, why didn't he come back? Why is it taking him so long to come back? Why did he come back? And they talk about him going home, and he can't go back to the house because he just can't deal with it all and everything else. So that's one thing I really like about this series, is how strongly themed each book and each segment of this series has been. The first one was just like meet the town. The second one was all about, dealing with the tragedy of his brother and finding out that things haven't gotten any better, and the town is stuck in basically where they were at when he left. And the third issue is really about going back home. And so it kind of feels like Randy's getting sucked back into the life that he left and he didn't want anything else to do with. So I imagine the fourth issue is going to deal with that, as it's probably going to open with him being at home. We're probably going to find out a lot of things about his childhood and his past in this issue. His girlfriend from wherever he came back from, I don't remember if they said, but his girlfriend was concerned when he left. And then she was calling at one point and he couldn't answer his phone because he was being kidnapped. So I'm sure there's something going to come of that. And so there's just a lot of things going on in small town West Texas. This is definitely a story about revenge, but also about letting go of the past. I wasn't sure. It's been kind of on the borderline for me, but I'm actually really enjoying this series. I'm definitely going to finish it out. I did see that the trade paperback is already up for pre-order, and I'm assuming that's going to hold the first 5 issues, which will probably be a really solid storyline. So If you haven't been reading this, I would say go ahead and pre-order the trade paperback. This is definitely going to be worth the read, especially once it's in trade. But if you have been following along, tell me, what do you think is going to happen next? Where is this story headed? Is Randy about to wage war on this whole town? Or is he going to let things go and just like let his past go and say it's not worth it and leave? I really don't know what exactly to expect going forward, but that's kind of the two paths I see. I can't wait to see what Chris Condon does with this and where this story goes. The artwork has been fantastic. Yellow is one of my favorite colors, and they use it a lot on like backgrounds and on skylines and stuff. So I'm all in on this series. I really enjoy it. If you're reading it, let me know. If you're not reading it, let me know why not. And until next time, keep flipping pages.